Okay, we should be live now. Just wait a couple of seconds. We're a little bit late today because my colleague wasn't around to help, so it is just me doing the techie bits. So it might be a little bit slow, sorry about that. I'll just wait a few minutes just so everyone can join. A second. Everyone's doing okay. About that. And that's myself on the video. I'm trying to get the comments up. Okay, we're live on a couple of different pages, but I'll be looking at the comments from the JIA Facebook page. So if you've got any comments or any questions, if you head over to our JIA Facebook page and type anything in there, and I'll be able to pick them up from there. Okay, so I think we'll get started now. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening on Facebook Live. My name's Anita. I've been at NRAS for nearly a year now, working in the marketing team. I was diagnosed with RA 6 years ago, and today I'm joined by a few members of the Young Voices group, and I'm a part of this group as well. So we're all made up of people that have experience with JIA and RA. And we were originally put together as an advisory group to develop the NRAS JIA service framework. Today, we're here to do kind of a special Facebook Live for Wear Purple for JIA, which is happening on Friday. And you'll be able to see kind of our bonnies in the background and balloons as well, which is great. So yeah, let me just introduce Wear Purple for JIA a little bit. Some of you might not know about it. So it was originally started by a lovely lady called Lynette, whose daughter Farah was diagnosed with JIA. And for the past 4 years, Lynette and us, and we've been campaigning to raise awareness and funds for JIA at NRAS through Wear Purple for JIA Day. So this year it's been a little bit different than what we originally planned. Our original date was the 5th of June, as a lot of you may know, and we've had to move it to November because of the pandemic and everything that's going on in the world. So yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's fundraised so far and taken part in the campaign and ordered packs and merchandise and everything. Currently, we've raised over £6,000 already, but that's not taking into account kind of all the fundraising that's going on Friday. So hopefully that figure will be well above 6,000. So I'll stop talking now, and I will let our lovely ladies of the Young Voices introduce themselves. So yeah, starting with Suruthi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Suruthi. I'm 22 years old and I was diagnosed with JIA when I was 3. I recently graduated from university. I actually completed my master's in chemistry this year, and I do a lot of work on social media for raising awareness on invisible illnesses.
Lovely, and we've got Hannah here as well.
Yeah, hi everyone, my name's Hannah. I'm 26 years old. I was diagnosed with JIA when I was 14. I'm now a wife, mum of 2 young children who are 1 and 2, and I'm also a qualified nurse.
Thank you, Hannah. And then last but not least, we've got Debbie.
Hi, yes, I've had JIA nearly all my life. I don't really want to give my age away. And I have a daughter who a few years ago got diagnosed with JIA. So I've been looking after her and my youngest daughter as well. And I'm now the young.
Oh, is Debbie frozen for everyone?
Oh no, yeah.
Okay, never mind. She was about to say she is the young person's project coordinator at NRAS. So we're really lucky to have her on board at NRAS. She's been with us for a couple of months now. We'll just wait for her to come back. I'll just type a quick message. We were a little bit worried about
live lives.
Yeah. Okay, we'll carry on. That's fine. I'm sure she'll join us in a minute. And she's gone, but she'll join us again. So today we're talking about a couple of different topics. We're going to be talking about experience of school, medication, self-management, and kind of the family experience as a young person with JIA. So first of all, if I'd like to talk about kind of the experience of school. I was diagnosed with RA when I was 21, so you know, I was already an adult, and I can't imagine you know, growing up with something so life-changing and being kind of like a young person, a child with it, especially going through school, which is, you know, already quite traumatic for a lot of people. So yeah, I'd be really interested to know your experiences. So yeah, Suruthi, so what was your experience of growing up with JIA in school?
So the effects of JIA on my school life was quite obvious because I actually started school quite late, and when I did, I was in a wheelchair, and my mum actually had to well, not work because she would be the one that would have to like wheel me around and stuff. So it was quite difficult because I already started school late, and then I was the kid who had their mum with them all the time. So it wasn't the easiest to sort of get involved with things and like make friends and stuff. It got a bit better after I didn't need my wheelchair anymore because I could kind of move around a bit more freely and take part in like more physical stuff. But it was still a bit difficult because at that point it wasn't obvious anymore that I did have arthritis. So things like, for example, in school when we had to like sit cross-legged in assemblies and stuff, like I just physically couldn't. People, like, not every teacher would know that I had arthritis because it's normally just your class teacher that knows. So sometimes they would like tell me like to cross my legs as if like I was just being like disobedient, whereas I just physically couldn't. So I found like that quite tricky because I think when you're a child it's quite hard to sort of speak up for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. How long were you using a wheelchair, and like how long did your mum have to help you?
I was in a wheelchair so I started school at the end of reception, and then I was in it until like halfway through year one. So it was like a decent amount of time.
Yeah, that must have been like it must have made you immediately quite different from everyone else. Like, did you feel that when you were that young, or was it kind
Yeah,
of
I definitely did because I remember just like at like playtime and stuff, like especially as a kid, like everyone's like running around, and I'm just like sat watching them. And I remember I used to think like, oh, I really wish I could run because like people would like race each other, and I just, yeah. But the school did try to make me involved, but like thinking back, I don't know how great it was. But I remember like when we did the nativity play, they made me the star that the shepherds followed. So like I was like wheeled around in my little gold costume, and like the shepherds followed me. So
oh
yeah.
yeah, I think especially then, that was what, about 10 15 years ago. Sorry, I'm not good at maths and figuring out people's age, but back then I'm guessing like the schools weren't so clued up in how to help and how to support kids with you know, disabilities, and then once you were out of the wheelchair as well, invisible disabilities. How do you think kind of schools can be more supportive in doing that from your experience?
I just think that, well, firstly, it'd be nice if they like sort of like, normally what would happen is I would have an issue at school, then I tell my parents, and then my parents would speak to my teacher, and the teacher would sort it out. But it'd be nice if they sort of thought these things through in advance, especially because like I was just at what, like 4 or 5 years old. I wasn't going to go up to a teacher and be like, sorry, I can't do this, can you like help me? I was just like just hiding away in the corner. So it would have been nice if they sort of thought these things through in advance and understood a bit more about invisible disabilities as well, because once I was out that wheelchair, it was just like there was nothing wrong, but there still was.
Yeah, I can't believe you got kind of told off for not sitting cross-legged. It just seems like such a trivial thing where, you know, a teacher would get so mad about that. But yeah, I mean, those were the rules, weren't they? You had to sit cross-legged, you had to sit a certain way in assembly. Yeah, hopefully that's kind of a little bit better now. It's nice to have you back, Debbie. I don't know where.
Yeah, sorry. First time ever my internet has just gone down, but yes, I've got a Wi-Fi extender up here as well, but it's, yes, I'm back now, sorry. Yes. Yeah, so you're discussing schools.
Yeah, we were just talking about schools.
Yeah.
So I'll probably go to Hannah now. What was kind of your experience, and how do you think schools can be a bit more supportive?
Yeah, so for me it was quite challenging because I was well until I was 14, and then my earliest memory is sort of walking from one building to another that were really far apart and realizing that I was hobbling. And then it very quickly, my symptoms escalated, and a few months later I was going into school in a wheelchair as well. And so it was hard going from like completely healthy to that. And I found like the whole adjustment of that quite difficult. And also like my friendships and like my relationships with my teachers changed. I was also really, really stubborn. So I was adamant that I wasn't going to have a teaching assistant push me around. So that made it a bit more difficult. And something I'm sure you can relate to, Saruthi, with being in a wheelchair is suddenly you're on a different level to everyone else. And I remember my friends walking in line and pushing me down the path, and I was in front of them. So when they were all chatting, I wasn't part of the conversation anymore. And actually that was the hardest bit about being in a wheelchair, was feeling like you weren't part of the group, literally because of that physical barrier. And then even if I wasn't in a wheelchair, I'd just be in a lot of pain. And this was like before I was on medication that controlled my symptoms. But I remember school for me at that time just became really, it was about getting through the day rather than learning. And just the effort of like getting to school was so exhausting that in the end, I decided that I would basically learn from home. So I had a few, like the odd hour in the week homeschooling with a tutor, and then my teachers would send me work and I would basically self-teach. So I did that for the last year of my GCSEs, and did my GCSE exams mostly home, a couple of them from my bed. But it wasn't all, I guess for me, I sort of had to grow up ahead of my peers. And that was the challenging bit because like they were all still like having a laugh and doing what 14-year-olds do. And for me, it was like, oh, suddenly like life's serious. Suddenly I'm dealing with pain. And I do remember, I don't blame him at all because you're a child, aren't you? But I do remember this boy being like, oh, you're not so fun anymore. And I was like, oh, but yeah. But it wasn't all bad. And like my teachers were, like I kept in touch with some of them for like many years to come. And they were really supportive, like emotionally. I guess I found it easier in a way talking to the teachers because they were adults and had that sort of level of empathy. So yeah, it was a difficult time, but got through it.
Yeah, that must have really, did that affect your friendships as well?
Massively, yeah, because at the time obviously it felt very difficult, but now as an adult I can recognize that like being 14 is a really difficult age because like you're hitting puberty, you're going through lots of like emotion, like developing emotionally, and you know your biggest concern is like, I don't know, whether you're going to youth club or you know that kind of thing. And so it's very difficult to then have a friend who's going through something like an illness and having a friend that was able to do those things and then couldn't. So it did affect my friendships. And that was really hard. But like I said, it's kind of expected, and they didn't know about the illness, so it was hard for them to understand.
Yeah, because your friends are young as well, and they might not know about all of these things, and they don't know about autoimmune conditions. And even on the days you did look well, if you couldn't do certain things, then it would confuse them as well. So
definitely, I mean, it was confusing for me, and I had it, let alone them. They'd be like, oh, you were fine yesterday, so why aren't you in school today? And it's like, you tell me, like, it's just the way that the disease works, unfortunately, and it's hard for people to get their head around sometimes.
Yeah, what you said about kind of being on a different level when you're in a wheelchair, like that's something I've never thought about, and that's something probably a lot of people don't think about, like how that affects a child and how excluded you can feel. So yeah, that's really insightful. How about you? What was your kind of experience? You were at school a little bit before us.
Yeah, just a bit. My schools, they weren't very good at all. I was diagnosed sort of around when I was sort of about 8 years old. And before that, I was a gymnast, and I had to stop that because my hands would just get so swollen that I just couldn't do it, and I was just in so much pain. So I kind of stopped doing that. And then it kind of went into lots more other joints, into my knees, into my hips. And that was then I then went into secondary school, and I had no support at all at secondary school. It was kind of in an old building, so when I was on crutches, just trying to get up the concrete stairs, 2 flights of stairs, was just a nightmare. And having it in my hands and then being on crutches as well, I was just in absolute agony the whole time. And my doctor at the time had only just put me on steroids. There was nothing else apparently for me, just always told, get on with it, really. And that's kind of what I got from the teachers as well. I did ask whether I could kind of leave a few minutes before the end of lesson so I could get to the other side of the school. Some said yes, some said no. And so I was then got told off for being late, which was, you're on crutches and you don't want to get knocked or anything as well. So it wasn't great at all. And kind of my worst experience was when I was doing A-levels and I went to the south of France for a geography field trip, which sounds amazing. But we were I think it was kind of like a converted prison that they had kind of on the side of a mountain where, for geography reasons, it was a fantastic place to be. But because of the coach trip and everything, my knees and my hips just had enough. I couldn't do anything. And so they just left me there all day. All the teachers and all the students just went and did all kind of the geography stuff, kind of looking at the ecosystems and things like that. And I was just stuck there on my own. And this was generally before kind of internet sort of time as well. So there was nothing I can do. I think there was kind of like foosball tables and kind of table tennis as well. And so when my friends sort of, I wouldn't probably call them friends now, but at the time they would come back and say, well, you've been here all day, you should be amazing at this. It's like, well, I can't really walk, and my hands were swollen as well, and it was just a nightmare. So then when I kind of got back into school, I kind of really didn't want to finish my A-levels. I just thought, what's the point really? I've got no support at all. But then I sort of sat down and realized that actually I kind of need a future. So I then went to university, and it wasn't until there that I actually got support. It turned out that I had kind of a breakdown outside my form tutors department, but they were great, and they were like, right, you're struggling, we can get you this, because at that time it went into my chest, I had it in my ribs as well, so I couldn't really breathe either. And it was just, but they were fantastic, absolutely brilliant. So I can't fault my university at all. And it was kind of a kickstart for me. I was like, right, so I should have had help and support in school. But now with my daughter having it, I've made sure that she has got the help and support in school. So, a negative has turned into a positive for her, because I wouldn't want her going through what I went through. And her school have actually been absolutely fantastic. So I can't fault them. But it's just unfortunate that, even some days now that people don't really understand invisible illnesses. So I'm hoping, we can help with the voice and everything to get it out there.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, like how your experience is so different to what your daughter's is now. But obviously it's great to hear that she's got so much support and, you know, things are getting so much better in schools.
Yeah, well, it also kind of, that's when I kind of mainly got in contact with NRAS because of their school's booklet. I actually gave that to the school and they were like, okay, we'll sit down. They actually read it that day because I had something in their hand. They read it that day. And yeah, and given her just so much support. It's been, yeah, they have been absolutely fantastic. So a negative into a positive, really.
Yeah, it's crazy how much like a booklet or a publication can help you, because when I was first diagnosed at 21 and going into my first job, like proper adult job, you know, I wasn't sure how to tell anyone. I wasn't sure how to talk about it with my colleagues and how to make my employer understand. So I think there's like an employment booklet and how to talk to your employer and everything. That really helped me. And that's what kind of made me aware of NRAS in the beginning. So the school's booklet sounds really good. And if anyone kind of needs me to send a link or anything, just put a comment in the Facebook Live and then I'll send that off to you later. So what else are we talking about today? So we're also talking about kind of family life and how having a chronic illness in the family, especially if it's a young child, how that can kind of impact the family and the family dynamic. So Suruthi, because you were kind of diagnosed at such a young age, how did your family, you know, act around you?
It was a really difficult time for my family, actually. Like, yeah, so they really struggled. Like, it's actually really difficult for them to talk about it. Like, we don't talk about it at all, actually, because they're like, they just don't want to talk about it because they call that like one of the hardest times of their life. Like, I remember my mum was saying, since she's been married to my dad, she's seen him cry once, and that was when he saw me in hospital with my joints and everything. Like, it was really difficult for them. And obviously with my mom having to wheel me around and stuff, like, it meant she couldn't work during the day and she worked nights, and it was really difficult because I think they were just really like struggling as well because they didn't know how to best support me, but they wanted me to be supported. I think there was a lot of frustration because they didn't know what to do, which is why I think things like the stuff that NRAS does is like really helpful, because I don't think there was this many like resources back then. Like, we're talking like just under 20 years ago, there weren't booklets about how to support your child when they go to school. So yeah, like, my parents saw me struggling and they want to do the best they can, but they just didn't know, like, even like legally and stuff, like what I'm entitled to, what support I should get. And it was just very much like a lot of my learning, like my dad or my mum would go through a lot of work with me at home because I'd either miss school because my joints were flaring or I had doctor's appointments, and I already started school almost a year late. So it was it was coming at them from all ends. Do you know what I mean? They'd have to work nights, or if my dad was working the day, then he'd have to take me to hospital appointments. Mom was working nights, then my dad would then have to come home from work and teach me how to do like my multiplication tables. So I think it was just a really difficult time for them, and like we found our way with it obviously by now, but at the time I think they just really struggled.
Yeah, I can imagine it, you know, it can shake up any family to, you know, find out that your child has a chronic illness, like chronic, it's with you for the rest of your life. It's just crazy. And you've got a brother, haven't you? How is he older than you or younger?
No, younger. Yeah, so like for a long while he didn't really know, he just knew that I had a bad leg. Like, we didn't, like, when he was really small, we didn't really know how to explain it to him, but he gets it now and he's quite supportive. Like, he'll help me do stuff when I'm not feeling too great. And obviously, like, I'm a lot older than him, so it's like he didn't see sort of like when I was a kid, because I think that's when it was like the most difficult in my family, whereas now we're sort of able to manage it a lot better. But he does sort of, I think all my family actually have a really hard time accepting the chronic part of it, because they're just really hoping that I'll just go away. Like, they know it won't, but you know, when you still have that little bit of hope. Because I remember my dad was like, we were at an appointment and my dad was like, will this fix it? And I was like, Dad, it's never gonna just go away. And he was like, oh. And I felt like I was like shattering his dreams at that moment. But it is just, I feel like they're a lot more hopeful than I am.
Yeah, my parents are a bit like that. I think it took them quite a long time to recognize that I've got a chronic illness, especially because there's no one that we know of in our family that has, you know, anything autoimmune. So it just came out of the blue, and both my parents are nurses as well. So they were like, yeah, it really kind of confused them. But I can't imagine what it would have been like if I, you know, got it when I was younger, because I got it at 21. So, you know, I was kind of still managing a little bit by myself. But then I had that aspect of it where sometimes, you know, I couldn't put my clothes on, sometimes I couldn't do up buttons or do my hair. So my mum had to help me. And then going through that as like an adult, you know, you feel like a child again, and you're like, oh, you know, you feel so much more helpless. Yeah, so Hannah, your dad is actually a GP, isn't he? So how was your kind of family dynamic after you got diagnosed?
Yeah, he is. I think that made it harder for him, to be honest. Like, I remember him taking it quite hard, and I think it's because he sort of felt helpless because he's my dad, not my doctor, but he sort of knew the help I needed and that kind of stuff. So it was quite frustrating for him. And also, I think he just struggled to accept it as well. Like, I don't think any parent would find it easy to accept that their child's ill. Like, it's, especially now I'm a parent now, I can't imagine how hard that would be. And yeah, so he found it difficult. But then on the flip side of that, when it came to the medical appointments and stuff, when it came to helping me with medication, which I know we're going to talk about, like, he was great with that practical stuff. For my mum, she had a self-employed business, and then I needed like almost full-time care at the beginning. So she gave up her business and became my full-time carer. And going back to what Saruthi said about like entitlements and stuff as well, like it took 2 years for us to realise that she was even entitled to carer's allowance. So we went 2 years without any income from her. But yeah, so that's something to bear in mind as well. I know things like that are more accessible now, but so yeah, so, and when I look back now, my mum, I mean, she'd do anything for me, but it was really an isolating time for her. And on a positive note, we became so close because I went from like stroppy teenager slamming doors, you know, I want this, I want that, to actually, Mum, I really need you. Like, and that bond that we developed because of that, like, we're like best friends now, and I really think it's just because of how close we got. And yeah, I found it difficult at times. So I've got a younger brother as well. He's 3 years younger than me. And he says to me now as an adult, like, I didn't really know what was going on. Like, I wish I'd known, because I would have, but I'm kind of pleased that he sort of knew I was ill, but he didn't know like all the details, and he didn't worry about it. And I'm pleased about that. But so he got into windsurfing, and my mum would take him at the weekends to like competitions all around the country, and she'd leave me with my dad. And I used to, as a teenage girl, I was like, oh my word, like, my dad's gonna have to help me off the toilet. And that was like really difficult at that age, because I think as a young child you can, you know, it's fine, but when you're a teenager, that's like not ideal. So anyway, something else about my brother. So I really feel like my JIA sort of shaped how he is as well, because he's such a caring and compassionate man now. And when I was pregnant with my son, I had a huge flare up, and he actually came and stayed with me, and he blew dry my hair, and he like did my cooking and stuff. And I was like, wow, like man you are, but I honestly think that's because he's watched my parents like look after me, and now he's like that caring, nurturing person. And you do wonder, would we all be the way we are if I hadn't gone through that? So yeah, really proud of him.
Oh, that's amazing. Does he still do windsurfing?
He doesn't, unfortunately, because he went to uni. Now he's got a full-time job, so he misses it, and sometimes he does go out for like the odd sail, but he's not doing it competitively anymore. So,
Did you ever kind of look at him and I don't know, kind of want to do what he's doing?
Definitely. Like before I was diagnosed, I did a lot of dancing, and I was really physically active, so I used to sort of watch him and be like, oh, look how he can just like whiz across the lake and do all these funky jumps and stuff. But then, to be honest, when it was like winter months, I was like, cold lakes, not my thing. So there was an element of it, and then there was an element where I was quite happy to sit on the side with a big fluffy coat on.
So Debbie, so your daughter's got JIA as well. So how?
That's right, yes.
How did you feel kind of when you got that diagnosis?
It was quite bizarre because actually both my children were in Great Ormond Street at the time. My youngest daughter, she's had similar symptoms, pain in her joints, and it came up in sort of both their blood tests. And so the consultant then sort of came in and says, right, I've got good news and bad news. One has it, one doesn't. And I just assumed my youngest would have it, but it actually turned out my eldest has got it. And my youngest has got hypomobility, and so that's causing her joint pain because her muscles aren't strong enough, because she's just extremely flexible. So when she then said that my eldest Sophie has got it, yeah, my heart just ripped apart, to be honest. It was the most heartbreaking thing, just because I knew what her journey would then be. And then I'm my own worst enemy anyway, and I completely blame myself. Growing up, I didn't want sort of have children ever to go through it, so I had quite a few conversations with my rheumatologist saying, you know, if I have children, would they have it? No problem at all. So no, they won't. And then having this diagnosis that she has, it was completely heartbreaking, and it took me a while to kind of take the guilt away. And actually, we're very, very close. It has made us really, really close. And actually, she's just amazing. She's just like, okay, fine, we'll just get on with it. And we have. She didn't take to methotrexate, which I think we'll talk about later anyway. But in the end, I think someone did turn around, I think it was probably my husband, just turned around and said, actually, she's got the best mum to take her through this. And I was like, okay, yeah. And so that's, you know, one thing coming with her on the journey with it. It's just like, right, I know more about it. I can, you know, talk to the schools a lot more and to her friends. And I think actually now the friends that she's got are just so easily adapted, and they just go, okay, that's part of Sophie, we take her as she is. It's great. Whereas when I was growing up with it, it was kind of like, well, you can't walk today, so you know, that was it, that was the end of the friendship sort of thing. So nowadays I'm hoping sort of kids are just more, you know, aware of kind of other illnesses, and that, you know, it doesn't define us, but it is unfortunately a part of us, and it always will be, but we can manage it, and we just do the best we can, really. So so it was tough, and it also hit my youngest. She hated seeing myself and my daughter in pain, you know, her sister in pain. It was just heartbreaking for her because she was 2 years younger. And so, but she's again the most caring, amazing girl, and she's on the Young Carers Council because she had to do stuff for me and kind of help Sophie out as well. And she's thriving with that. You know, she's so compassionate. And actually in her nursery there was a girl in a wheelchair, and they're best friends. Well, they were, and they kind of sort of still are. You know, every day it's like, I want to see Evie. And she was in a wheelchair, and you know, as I think you were saying, Hannah, you know, you're in a different level, but Emma would always go around and talk to her, and I just thought, actually, that's amazing to see kids like that. So hopefully
from such a young age as well, like that's so lovely.
Yeah, she was just like, no, and she was always taking Evie and pushing Evie everywhere. So I think she's generally very caring, and that has just come out. And hopefully, then years to come, it will, it'll do her the world of good. But yeah, it was tough, but we've got through it. And as a family, the four of us are just so close that, yeah, that again, one good thing that's come out of it, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hopeful and comforting that everything's getting better. Support in schools getting better. We have more resources available. There's more help. So because this is something I've ever since I got diagnosed, I've been worried about, is kind of having kids and possibly passing it on to my kids and having to live through a family where two people are chronically ill. Yeah, but like speaking to you, Debbie, and Hannah as well, it's kind of really comforted me because it's something that's kind of always in the back of my mind. But yeah, it's really good to hear about that as well. And do you kind of have any advice or any tips for families that might be struggling or?
Just talk about it, I think, is one thing, because growing up I never really spoke about it at all, because my mum was always told, she came with me to all the appointments and was just never really told anything about it. And this was kind of before you could go and Google it and things like that. And so I think now there is a lot more support out there for parents. You're not on your own, but I think there's still a lot more to do, which is why hopefully my post at NRAS, we can take that side forward to let parents know that you're not on your own. There are people going through it as well. So just get in contact with us and we can help and support you through it. Because I think having another parent to talk to really makes you realise that you're not on your own, and you can help other people as well.
Yeah. Suruthi, is there any kind of advice or anything you can pass on to people?
I think it's just like Debbie was saying, just to talk about it, because I think for me it was affecting so many aspects of our lives, but we never really spoke about how anyone was feeling. And like the emotional side of it is like, not just as a kid, like any age, it can really affect you emotionally. And like, I just think you need to talk about it, because now me and my family do talk about it a lot more than, well, we never spoke about it before, so definitely a lot more. And it's just nice to get everything out on the table. It's just like, communication is just so important, I think. So just say talk about it, and make sure like your child feels comfortable to tell you whenever they feel a certain way as well, instead of like bottling it up.
Yeah, completely. I think talking about it is the route to it, because then people as long as the family really understands what everyone's going through, then it's easy to explain to others as well. But it is a very hard thing to fully discuss though, because as soon as you mention the word arthritis, everyone always assumes it's the osteoarthritis. So then trying to explain that no, it's not that, it's not the old person's disease, because I think if I was given £1 for anyone who told me that, I would be very, very rich by now.
I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah, and for my daughter as well. So it's kind of, some things have changed, but there's still a lot more to go, and to get rid of the stigma as well is a massive thing. So even just, the things we're doing now, we're talking about it, we're getting it out there, and it is okay to talk about, I think the more we do, the more awareness and the understanding that will come.
Is there anything else you want to add, Hannah?
Yeah, I would just say sort of I think sometimes there's like a pressure when you're diagnosed with someone to like be positive and like be hopeful all the time. And actually sometimes, even for parents and the child, just saying, actually, this is really hard and I need support, that has a strength in itself, and we shouldn't be afraid. And I think even as a parent, just saying to your child, like, I'm finding this hard, that's almost like comforting to the child, because you think, oh, I'm not finding this hard on my own, like we're in this together as a family. And parents shouldn't sort of be afraid to share their emotions, because I think as a child you can assume, oh, they're not talking about it and it's a taboo subject, or you know, if they don't, you kind of look to your parents, don't you, and think, well, how are they handling it? And that's how I'll handle it. And I think as a child, that's really important. And then the other thing I was going to say was just to like focus on the here and now and like practical steps rather than worrying too much about what could be or what could go wrong or how things could turn out. Because I think as a family, like, we worried about the future and stuff like that, and actually we didn't really need to. So just focusing on like one day at a time is really important.
Thank you, Hannah. I think because obviously having your chronic illness can affect your mental health so much as well, and especially as a child where it affects your friendships and how your experience is completely different. I think, yeah, it's definitely, you need communication within a family unit, and, you know, just have all your emotions out there so people know how you're feeling and how you're dealing with things. And if you are struggling as a child or even as a parent, to ask for help. You know, therapy is so important, and so it, you know, it's such a strong tool for you. So medication is another kind of aspect of having JIA as a child that can be really difficult, both for the child and for the parents. So I'd like to ask you all about kind of your experiences of having to take medication from a very young age. How are you at self-injecting? Have you gotten better? Suruthi, are you scared of needles?
Yeah, terrified. And unfortunately, I just didn't grow out of it. But when I was younger, I was lucky enough that I didn't need any of like the biologics and stuff that you need to self-inject, because I don't know how I would have done it, to be honest. But I was still really scared of needles because I'd had some steroid injections and some like fluid drain from my knees and stuff. But they used to put like numbing cream on, which really helped with the pain, because then I would still freak out, but then I'd be like, oh, it doesn't hurt, which was nice. And they'd always give me like nice plasters and sometimes a lolly, and that would cheer me up. So that was, yeah, I basically had to be bribed into it, but it worked. And then with like other medication, because I was on some other stuff that was tablets, it was just, I just knew I had to take it. My parents would always remind me when to take it, and I just sort of take a big gulp of water and get it done with, to be honest. But I don't think I could have handled like remembering by myself.
Yeah, and Hannah, is it something you struggled with, taking medication and injections?
To be honest, this is where having a GP as a dad really came in useful, because I remember like my dad teaching me how to do my first injection, and he was literally, it was methotrexate, and because I'd switched from tablets to injections because the tablets were making me feel really sick, and he was like, yeah, get the vial, draw it up, pinch an inch, stick it in, job's done. And I literally, I think because he was so fearless about it, that really rubbed off on me. And when I went on to biologics, they sting a bit more if they're cold. So I take them out the fridge for half an hour before, and that makes a big difference. But also, because I'd like gone on infusions for a while, so having those in hospital, I didn't have to inject. And then when I started working, I changed to injections just so I didn't have to go into hospital one day a month. And so then I had to like learn again. And that time I remember, because as a nurse, I'd injected quite a few people by then. And I just sort of like used the same approach and just kind of pretend it wasn't my stomach and go for it. And yeah, I'm really lucky in that sense. And to be honest, now I've been poked with needles that many times, I just don't feel it. It's like, I just don't feel it. Even when they take the bloods, I just don't even notice. But I'm lucky.
Yeah, Suruthi's like envying you, like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And Debbie, what were you like, and what's your daughter as well like?
Yeah, growing up, I was just on steroid tablets, so I just took them. Yeah, they made me put weight on, they made me balloon up. Not the greatest going through teenage years, but it was just what I knew would help, and so I just did. And then I was on after kind of it's gone into my eye. So after seeing 4 years ago, I've got scleritis and everything else majorly all flared up. I was then on steroid tablets again, and then I had to have steroid injections in joints, and then I was put on methotrexate. That was tablets again, like with Hannah, but that made me feel really awful. And then thankfully I moved on to injections. But then that killed all my white blood cells. I then had to come off that, and I was then put on to I was going through other DMARDs as well. Then I went on to biologics, and I'm on that now. I was on Humira. That was no problem. Great, I could do it quite easily. Then they moved me on to biosimilar. And the injection's different. You actually, instead of there's no button to push, you just have to push it in yourself. And when my hands are bad, I can't do that. My husband has to do that for me. Yeah, so it does hurt a bit. But then with my daughter, having to do, she again started on the methotrexate tablets, which was just a major battle. She'd just take one slowly at a time, and then after about an hour it was just that it's not happening, you know. So then thankfully they could see that she was struggling, put her onto methotrexate injections, and I had to do that. But she first of all was fine, but then she became quite ill on them with the nauseous and everything. So it was literally trying to bribe her to have it. We had a contract, and you know, we agreed what she would have afterwards, and we both signed it. And again, that worked for a bit, but then afterwards it's like, no, I really don't want them. And it caused her to have, yeah, other issues, and it was just, again, what didn't work. And so her team at Great Ormond Street could actually see that she was really struggling, and moved her onto a biosimilar as well. And because they're only an injection every fortnight, they actually have made life so much easier. Again, it does sting a bit, but you know, after about 10 seconds it's gone, and then that's it for 2 weeks. And it's really been a life changer for both of us. I mean, I can actually walk, and I can actually see, and my daughter, yeah, we not really that much pain. So fingers crossed it still works for us. But I know some parents, I don't know how you would do it to a younger child though, because you know, teenager, they can just get up and walk away. Yeah, so but then, you know, hopefully we can help other people as well going through that.
Yeah, it's so important to communicate like with your rheumatology team and your
Completely.
doctors if you're struggling. I mean, that's me saying it, and even I struggle with it. For a long time I was on methotrexate tablets, and you know, the side effects are just horrendous, and nausea and everything. And then I was on injection, and even with that I would just get so much anxiety when I had to do it, and my partner often had to help me because I just couldn't look at it, or I couldn't do it.
Because I know that with the injections being yellow now, some children, even my daughter said actually she's got a slight phobia of anything yellow, because it just triggers all those memories of having the injections, and it's just, and the feeling the sick. It's like, no. So yeah, but for me it was the smell of the alcohol wipes, and having hand sanitizer everywhere with alcohol in it. It's just like, yeah, but you soon get over that now. You've got to. But yes, there are other, you know, side effects again with the mental health that you just don't realize that goes with it all. It's they're not the nicest medications to take, but then they're the only things that, you know, work. And then you just have to really then think, actually these will make me feel better. You have to unfortunately take them.
Yeah. Has anyone got any kind of tips for parents that are struggling to you know, struggling with their kids taking medications, or anything that you've found that helped you when you were doing them?
I think, sorry, just always go to your rheumatology nurse, because like we said with methotrexate, there's the injection and the tablet. So if one doesn't suit, you can always try the other. But yeah, carry on, Saruthi.
Yeah, and also with like the methotrexate, for example, I was really like stubborn that I wouldn't use the injections, because I was like, needle, but they were so much better than the tablets, even though like it sounds all scary. Like, first of all, those tablets are horrid, but I could instead just do like a 10-second injection and get less side effects. So I'd say like definitely be open to it. And with like injections, when I was on one of the biologics that I was on, even if I took it out the fridge like even an hour before I wanted to do it and let it come to room temperature, it still really stung, and I just couldn't hold it in long enough to get the full dose. Like I would always just let go of the pen because it hurt. So I was actually really lucky that my local GP nurse would see me every 2 weeks, because that was on they only had to do it once every fortnight, and she would do it for me, and that really helped, like, because it was so near, and it was only every 2 weeks, I could fit it in, and it didn't take long either. I'd be in and out within 5 minutes tops, but it really helped because I was finally getting the full dose and I could finally see just how much the medication could help me. So like, I didn't know that was an option until one of the rheumatology nurses told me about it. So like, once again, please like speak to your rheumatology department.
Yeah, I agree. Getting it out of the fridge does help. I find at least half an hour getting it out of the fridge does help. But then I think also with the medication, sometimes they can take so long to actually take effect that you kind of get disheartened straight away anyway, because you're doing this but you see no effect of it. But just give it time, and actually then you can see that it does really help you. So you just, yeah, give it time as well. It'd be another tip.
Yeah, because with methotrexate, I think it takes 3 months, they say,
Yeah.
and that must be difficult to communicate with a child, because they're taking something that, you know, isn't helping straight away. So it might be difficult.
Yeah, but then when you can see that it does help, it makes life a lot easier as well. It's just like, okay, I know why I'm taking it now as well. So yeah, that helps. Okay,
I've just got a question through from Hazel Parsons on our Wear Purple page for Debbie. And I think this is talking about your daughter, Sophie. Do you think her experience will be different / better to your experience with the new medications that are available?
Oh, completely. Yes, she can still do most things that she's kind of ever always wanted to do. She was actually wanting to be a gymnast like myself, and she unfortunately had to give that up. But she just is so physically active that you wouldn't actually notice at all. I had parents' evening last year, and I spoke to her PE teacher, and one of the questions Sophie wanted me to ask was, "Do you think she knows that I've got JIA?" And I asked her, and I was like, "Do you know that Sophie's got?" She's like, "No, really, I wouldn't have noticed at all." She was on the netball team and she is properly thriving. Whereas when I went through school, I had nothing. I was just on the steroids and it went everywhere. But I can see the main difference with Sophie, that it is in quite a few of her joints, but the quality of life that she's got is so much better than what I've got. And yeah, we really do try to keep her as active as possible. We do, obviously she does have bad days, but generally when we have the good days, we've really tried to make the most of it as well. But don't overly push yourself, but just moderate it, and just, you know, if they want to do it, just let them do it. I hope that helps.
I'm just going to read some more comments. Marie-Louise Grant said, "Hannah, your experiences really echo what my daughter is still going through in school." So that's nice to kind of, that you've spoken about that, Hannah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then we've got Angelique Lansley, who said, "The hardest part was finding the right treatment. We seemed to be changing meds every 6 months until we found the right drugs."
That was my mum.
Oh,
that's my mum.
Yeah.
Yes, it can, I think, be quite heartbreaking to know that, you know, you try something. Even myself, I tried a few and they really didn't work, and it was just like, then you have to try again on something else. But eventually, hopefully, you will get there and find something that really does work. So just,
do you know what, as well, I remember my rheumatologist explaining to me why I had to try it for a few months. And I was 14 and now I'm 26, and I still remember him having that conversation. So I think that's really important as well. Like, just because you're young or a child, you can still understand these concepts. So he was sort of saying to me, like, we have to start with these medications and eliminate them before we can get funding for the next ones. And in my head, I was just like, right, I'm on this for 3 months, and if it doesn't work, we're moving on the next one. And just sort of like, yeah, it really helped me just having that explanation, and knowing that I was working towards, and that one day I would find something that does work, and I did. So
I think the NICE guidelines really help with that, because when I was like going through the drugs, like I knew what to expect. Like once I tried the methotrexate and it didn't work, I was like, okay, that's one DMARD done, but I know I can't they can't apply for funding for a biologic till I've been on 3. So I knew that I'd had to try another one. And it was nice to know, like, because even with my dad now, like that's what we do. Like we go through the guidelines and we go, okay, right, well, we know this is what the doctor's going to do next. So like maybe suggest that at your appointment, because I was just like, I want a biologic because everyone says it's really good. So once I actually saw like what the steps were, I was like, okay, this makes sense. And it was like, however young you are, I think it's nice to kind of know what to expect instead of just having to do something without knowing kind of what the future holds.
Definitely. And everyone's experience of medication is so different as well. Like I know someone who went on methotrexate and that was it. Like it's controlled her disease. And so, you know, it's not a long process for everyone. And I think that's really important to acknowledge as well.
Oh yeah, some people really, yeah, they some really do thrive on methotrexate, which I was quite envious of, and I was like, why can't that happen to me? But it's, as you say, it's not for everyone, but that's why there's many different drugs out there for people to take, and then you learn how to, you know, to thrive and self-manage as well.
Definitely.
Yeah,
so a bit like one of my nurses said it was a bit like Harry Potter, like everyone has to find their wand, and that's what finding a medication was like.
I like that.
It's Suruthi, the point you made about the NICE guidelines was actually quite valid, because a lot of people don't know about that. Like I never knew about you know, that we've got these guidelines that all hospitals and rheumatology departments have to follow. So yeah, if you are struggling with kind of medication and you feel a bit lost, then that's a really useful thing to have a look at. And NRAS have been doing some campaigning as well around those. Hopefully we'll have kind of an update next year, fingers crossed. We've got a comment from Peter David Turner, who said, my son is 15 and has GIA. He takes methotrexate and really doesn't like taking it and doesn't like the look of it. It makes him feel sick. The GP said it's a common problem and affects a lot of patients with the psychological side of it. Yeah, to that, I'd just say that talk to your doctor, talk to his doctor, and, you know, if he is really struggling, you know, you can try something else. And
yeah, I'd say talk to the if you've got a specialist nurse or a paediatric rheumatologist, I'd talk to them rather than the GP, and see if they can help more as well, and just say that he is really struggling on it, because it does happen, and so they are used to those sort of phone calls, so they might be able to give you some hints and tips as well.
Yeah, I find the nurses are really helpful, because I remember I was speaking to one of mine and I was just saying, like, listen, like this is just like the other one, like I don't like the look of it, I don't like the taste of it, I don't like the feeling. And she was like, she just kind of talked me through, and she was like, okay, but what about the good side? What's happening? Are you walking? And I was like, yeah, actually I am. So now, like, before I have like a meltdown of any medications, I always think about my activity. I think, how active have I been? And sometimes it's like really easy to just not actually realize just how much it's helping you until you like stop and think about it. And I'll be like, oh my god, like I've done this for the first time in my life. Like there are things that, like, for example, at the age of 21, that was the first time I sat cross-legged. That was the first time I was able to like ride a bike, and like that's crazy. And like it just knowing that makes it all worth it. Like those like 10 seconds of freaking out because you have to put a needle in, like it makes it all worth it. So I'd just say, like, really think about the whole experience and go from there.
Thank you. I think we're gonna start wrapping up now, but I'll finish off with a couple of questions. So this is to all of you again, starting with Suruthi. So having lived with GIA for most of your life and reflecting back on that, what would you tell your younger self?
I tell my younger self to own it, actually, because I think one of the most difficult parts of this condition was that I spent a long time hiding it, because I felt it was just so isolating that I was just like, let's just pretend it isn't there, because then I could just be like everyone else, kind of thing. But it just stopped me from getting the support I needed, and it just made things more difficult. Whereas now I'm very loud and proud about it. Like I had like a coming out post and everything. I was like, everyone needs to know, because this is me. It's like, it doesn't define me, but it's a very big part of me. So I just tell my younger self to not worry so much and own it and just be proud.
Yeah. And the other question was, is there anything unexpectedly positive that's come out of having JIA?
Yeah, definitely. I actually think one of the biggest things is like the like chronic illness community. Like I have an account on Instagram where I've connected with so many lovely people, and also charities like NRAS, because I did it, like I knew because of myself that other young people had it, but if it wasn't for charities like NRAS, I'd never actually seen people with it, if you know what I mean. Like they were like this mystical creature, but like to actually put like actually know like this person is just like me, it's so validating. And yes, it's so lovely. Like I can't put it into words.
Yeah, ever since kind of the Young Voices was formed, I think I've really enjoyed kind of talking to everyone about their experiences, and you know, we can all share with each other, and when we're having a bad day or struggling with something in particular, then someone else might be able to help. So yeah, it is really nice. And yeah, the chronic illness community online on social media is great. So yeah, I'd pose the same two questions for you, Hannah. So what would you tell your younger self, and is there anything unexpectedly positive?
Yeah, so I would definitely tell my younger self that everything is going to be fine, and not just fine, actually, everything's going to be really good. And also not to worry so much about the future. Like, I was quite pessimistic when I was first diagnosed, and I thought, you know, no one's going to marry me. I'm not going to be able to work. I'm going to be stuck in bed for the rest of my life. And I looked at Google as well, worst thing ever, and was like, okay, my joints are going to be deformed. And actually, like, I've achieved everything I think I would have achieved if I hadn't had it, and maybe even more. So like my husband and I, we became friends when I was really, really poorly, and he just accepted me for me, and that obviously grew into more, and he's like so supportive. And I'm not sure really if we'd have connected on that level if I hadn't been going through what I had. And then also like with my nursing career, so I remember being really inspired by my rheumatology nurse when she told me that she had RA, because suddenly I was like, oh, you've got RA and look at you, like you're a specialist nurse, you're helping other people. And she was so caring and empathetic. And so yeah, and I did it, and I qualified, and now I feel like I've sort of come full circle, and now I can sort of use the insight that I have, and I don't sort of shout. I don't, in a professional case, I don't sort of shout about with my patients, but I do think it gives me this level of empathy where they know that I can understand, if that makes sense, just through like the care that I show them. And that's something really positive that's come out of my JIA for sure.
Debbie?
I would tell my younger self, again, probably sort of similar lines to Hannah, really, not to worry, don't get caught up in kind of in the bad days. There will be good days. And yeah, similar to you, I met my husband when I was going through a really bad time at university, and he was, you know, probably the first bloke that ever actually didn't laugh at me, and he was really, really supportive. And from that day onwards, he's been absolutely great. I wouldn't have, like you, I'd never wanted to get married. I never wanted, you know, the family life, that wasn't at the time for me, because I felt very isolated as a kid with having it, and I just assumed that that would be me for life. And yeah, so now I'm married with my two kids, and my kids are great. And actually, Sophie, having it, actually wants to be an immunologist, so I can actually kind of work out what's going on with the immune system. And you know, full credit to her. And you know, having a very caring younger daughter as well, I couldn't be prouder of them. And also, I probably wouldn't have my job here at NRAS either, which lockdown was quite pivotal for me, because I really, homeschooling, I knew I really didn't want to be a teacher. So I was like, what do I want to do with my life? My kids are now at secondary school, and it was actually, I really want to help people go through the disease that I've got, but I don't want people to go through the experience that I had. And I really seen over the last however many years it is that medications have changed, which is fantastic, but there are things that haven't, and I just really want to get the awareness and understanding and get people talking about it, and getting services out there to families who are struggling with this. It again won't define us. We really do make the most out of life, and we can absolutely thrive with it as well, which is, I think, is a very important note to get out there, that yeah, you will have your bad days, but you have your better days, and enjoy and make the most out of them.
Yeah. Thank you, Debbie. Okay, so I think we will wrap up now, but I just want to kind of recap and say what you were saying, Debbie, that it's so important to raise awareness, and that's what Wear Purple for JIA is all about. So if you have ordered a fundraising pack, then that's amazing. We'd love to see, you know, your pictures with the selfie frames. Got one here.
Yes. I got mine too.
Yeah.
Get it up. Yeah, there we go. I can't get it quite the screen.
We'd love to see your pictures, and in any of the merchandise, and yeah, thank you for
the wristband as well.
Yeah,
Balloons.
thanks to
Balloons.
everyone who's
Bonnie the dog about there. I think Hannah's got one too.
you can still do some fundraising if you want. You can do like a virtual quiz or Facebook fundraiser. There are loads of ways to do things virtually online now, as it's so difficult to do, you know, any events these days. We had one really good one. We had a girl do a jumpathon on a trampoline, which was really good. So yeah, that was amazing. But yeah, something else we would like to bring up as well. We've got the NRAS Christmas cards on sale now. So that would be great. If you go on the NRAS website, there's a banner and there should be a link to the shop. We've got loads of designs and loads of gifts as well. So yeah, if you want to order your Christmas cards from us, that would be amazing. It would just you know, help support us in, you know, this difficult time for us and all charities really. But yeah, so thank you everyone who's tuned in and watched us this evening. We really hope you got something good out of it. If you've got any questions for any of us, just feel free to either send us a message on the NRAS or JIA or Wear Purple Facebook page. We've got so many. Or just leave a comment in the Facebook Live. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to do another Young Voices Facebook Live. There are still a couple of members that haven't done it yet, so try and drag them out. Yeah. Thank you guys for joining me as well, Suruthi, Hannah and Debbie. It was really, really nice to hear about all your experiences of having JIA. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
And you, stay safe.